Welcome back, everybody, to the Behind the Lava podcast. I'm Spencer. I'm going to be host again today. We got Johnny, Prez, Ati, Hawaii joining us again. We got T, and we got Fatu. We are going to pick up right where we left off last time, continuing our discussion of the topics that have come out of the tragedy at Uvalde, Texas. And we've already covered pretty extensively our different takes on where we stand with the Second Amendment and those issues. And we were just getting into talking about the role of police in all of this. And so I think a good way to start it is I'd like to kick it to T, who had a nice insight that he wanted to share right at the tail end of that last episode. So T, you want to bring that up?
So you had that Austin, the shooting, your former Marine, he was in the tower, barricading himself, shooting people.
The college, right? That one?
Yeah. I think it was at the college, yeah. Back in Austin, back in the 60s. Yeah. And they didn't really have a training on how to approach this type of subject. So that's around the time when SWAT was created in the 60s for that purpose. And then because of Columbine and handling that situation, they created, down in good old Texas, they created the ALERT program, which is the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. And big purpose for that is for engaging in taking on an active shooter. I'm not sure if that's the nationwide police training that I think it is. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But that's a training that a lot of police should have. I only know about it because I work with a police officer. He's also a SWAT operator, and within that field, other certifications that come along with being a SWAT team officer. So, but first, Mr. Thompson was right when he's talking about the cops. They're just humans, even when things are going on. And I got my tinfoil hat conspiracy about what happened with the way in which they handled Uvalde. But most of all, if you sign up for law enforcement, you should know what you're getting into. That's why even at my old and ripening age, I want to join law enforcement because I want to be out amongst the people, not trying to roll people that look tough, but engage with my community and see what's going on and see if I can help things on that end. And I know right away that my life could be at risk if I were to make it through and become one. And my wife is like, "Oh, don't do it. You'll die." But it goes back to the same thing before joining the Marine Corps when I was on a LDS mission and they were asking like, "Oh, what would you want to do?" I'm like, I might join the military. I didn't know which branch at the time because my brothers and sisters are out there fighting and dying, and I'm just chilling. And then the lady looks at me and she says, "Well, you want to die?" I was like, "Nah, but rather me than someone else." And the same thing, I think nobody wants to have the mindset to die, but also understand that this is what you get into it for. That's at least how I think they should be. But of course, we're all human and people handle things differently, no matter what. This thing could be easy to you, but hard for another person. I can't judge on that.
That's perfect because it reminds me of that phrase that everybody wants to be a gangster. So it comes time to do gangster stuff. I'm going to edit myself because I have family members that'd be sad if they heard me cussing on here. But that's at the heart of this because I think there's definite genuine criticism that could be going towards law enforcement, especially the way they handled the situation in Uvalde. But what I'm getting sick of seeing, and you guys can relate on this on the military side, because you hear typical stuff like little people throwing in their 10 cents on little things here and there, where people imply that, "Oh man, I would have done this, I would have done that." And I'm like, you see this trend of internet tough guys that are flexing saying, "Oh, cops should have done this, should have done that. If I was that cop, I would have done this." So I'm like, I get sick of hearing that because a lot of people, when they do that for military, I'm like, sign up, enlist. I know recruiters. It's like, you can go tomorrow. Like, I'll help you out. But everyone can talk tough on the internet. And I think while there's legitimate criticism that should be given towards the police in these situations, because as people who are funded by taxpayer money, they are beholden to the taxpayer for accountability. You have to hold these institutions to account, because if if you don't, they can wind up being the boot on your neck. Part of maintaining a balanced and orderly society. Yeah, we have to have cops, but those same cops have to be held to account for their failings. No one can be basically the institution that's too big to fail. That's a bad institution. We have to have a balance on all things. So, but at the same time, while giving criticism, like when people want to take this opportunity to basically make themselves look like a tough guy by saying, I would have done this or that. I'm like, those are empty words. Like, you want better cops? Go sign up to be a cop. Oh, you're not going to do that? Well, at a certain point, maybe take down the tough guy talk just a little bit.
Well, if that's the case, if we're going to judge and criticize law enforcement on their ability to police or to carry out their duties, then, I mean, where's the tough guy criticism for that worker that burned my burrito when I ordered it through the drive-thru? If I was in that kitchen, I would have flipped it on time, but I wasn't. That's why it got burned. Essentially, it's just mocking the statement of hindsight's 20/20. Everything's a lot clearer after the fact. Everybody can be an armchair quarterback. It's easy to sit back and watch in slow motion when you're not emotionally and physically invested. But that's the way of the internet. That's the beauty of anonymity. That's the beauty of hiding behind a fake profile picture. You're allowed to express in ways that you never thought you could. And it really brings out the good in people and communities, but it also brings out the sick and demented and the depraved. And you're going to get the whole group. You're not just going to get the angels, touched by an angel. I compare it to video games. Elden Ring is one of the best RPGs I've played in a long time, but it's a Souls game and it's based on its difficulty. And when you play these games, they're just known for being hard. These bosses, and they're just very difficult. Now, the first time you've ever touched a Souls game, you're going to die a lot because you're not going to understand. But then you live and you learn, and you pick up the patterns, and you understand how these bosses move, and then you find ways that work. And so a lot of times when we sit back here and when you're in the heat of the moment, you don't see and you don't understand, but then you learn after the fact, and you become better after the fact. You're not better during. So the whole keyboard warriors and the whole criticism towards the cops that were standing outside, it takes a lot to rush into a building where you don't know if you're going to be shot in the door. I know we used to teach mountain in Marine Corps, and they teach you how to stack outside of a door to enter a building to clear a room. And when you stack, you have 4 guys lined up on a door, and usually the first guy, if there's a machine gun nest in there, and the enemy would just sit low and dig themselves in, have a little machine gun facing at the door, and it's usually the first guy in there that dies. And in the Marine Corps, we're taught to just push in there. Sometimes if you have it, you'll have the second guy frag the room first before you enter, but you won't always have that luxury. If it's a 5-bedroom house, you're not going to be carrying around 5 grenades. You're going to run out after the second house. And so it takes a lot to be that point man, to be that guy to kick the door down and rush in first and see, wait, where is he at? Where's he at? Where's he at? Because usually you're the guy that's going to tell everyone else behind you where the shooter is. Just like how that Border Patrol agent at first rushed in, got shot in the head. Thankfully he lived, but it's one of those situations, and it takes a lot for you to ask that from everyone and expect every law enforcement, the human aspect still going to be there. We're still fallible. We're still human. But to ask perfection of every single law enforcement officer out there is the same as asking perfection for every single profession out there. Doctors, nurses, lawyers, school teachers, they all come in stages. There's good teachers out there and there's horrible teachers. There's civil servants, politicians, your congressmen, your presidents, your vice presidents, your director of the committee for national parks. They come in different levels. There's still a human aspect in there. So to put all the blame on one specific entity is just trying to find somebody to point the finger at to give you closure or to give somebody to focus anger on. So, I mean, I don't think it's right, and I don't think we should do that either. But yeah, that's me.
I think the underlining part of the conversation is these are human beings. And at the end of the day, we all have fallacies within each and every one of us. Let's look back at 9/11, right? Were first responders, were they ever trained for anything like that? Answer to that is no. No first responder were ever trained for a terrorist attack, especially something big like that happening in New York. Now, to these individual states, these individual local municipalities, this is probably the first time that any incidents like this happen within their area. So for them to respond in the manner compared to like say what happened in the Columbine. Right now, Columbine, if there was anything that were to happen again in Columbine, the first responders would know exactly what to do because they learned from what happened. For Uvalde, this is the first time that's ever happened in Uvalde, for that matter. So the responders didn't have an SOP in place for any first situation, although they had something for active shooter. But a situation like this, to figure out the ins and outs, the blueprint on how to attack a situation like this, they didn't have nothing like that. And there's no training under the first responders' belt to combat something like this because it's a first scenario. So for me, I don't lay the blame on the law enforcement, especially the first responders, because this is the first time that's happened, and it's a learning curve for them. I guarantee you, though, if there's something like this that was going to happen again in Uvalde, they will then know what to do for next incident. So at the end of the day, I don't blame them necessarily, but this is like a wake-up call to every other state, every other local municipality in the United States, is to implement training. So that way, when incidents like this happen, they already know what to do, learn from the previous mistakes from these different incidences. And it comes back to where funding has to be available for our departments, especially the police departments, for them to expand on their training, not only on the things that they know of, but to combat things that are unknown. And I guess that's how we are in the military. We always train for the unknown, because when it does happen, that training comes back and we already automatically know what to do. In the medical field, that's something that we do every single time. It's train. At the end of the day, I save a limb. Or I don't save a limb, actually. It's the life. I don't care about the limb. The life matters. And that's ultimately what it comes down to when I'm on the field or I'm trying to save somebody, especially in the military, for the medical aspect of my training. But at the end of the day, no, I don't lay blame on the response time. I mean, the response time was there, but as far as trying to figure out the blueprint to get in there and attack this individual, this is probably their first time.
So this is one of those things where I really do find myself in the middle, because I don't consider myself a libertarian, but when it comes to certain things, this is one of those things where I can lean more libertarian, where if the government's taking my money for a certain thing, specifically in this case, first responders, they have to yield a specific outcome, product, or service. And that's why when it comes to being a civil servant, you are accountable to the civilians that you took an oath to serve. But at the same time, what you guys are weighing in on is the reality of the situation as well. If you expect perfect police, perfect soldiers, perfect anything, the common factor is that we're also going to be human. Or the way that I even put it when people hurl certain accusations at the military is that you want the greatest military in the world, and I'll vouch for our military, but at the end of the day, people need to understand that we do not have the luxury of choosing who we serve with. We're a volunteer military. At the end of the day, you have to work with whoever showed up. And so when it comes to this life or death situation, how can I sit there and tell a guy, hey, you should have dove head first into that? I can't do that. I can't do that to another human being. Now, I would expect if he took that oath that he'd be willing to, but I didn't take that oath. He did. And if I'm not willing to do that, how can I tell him to do that? And so I was still kind of in the middle where it's like, because in this particular case, some of the details that are coming out surrounding the police department in Uvalde is that they actually did drill for a similar scenario to this. They had active shooter drills in a school environment. And it took place just a few months before this happened, or like half a year before this happened. But at the same time, I don't have all the details. And so I do need to take a step back and wait for the investigations to show me what are the failings here in these institutions, because they do need to be held accountable. And it goes back to what Ati asked in the last episode about who has to pay. If there is a failing in this institution that is there specifically to respond to these situations, we need to address that failing.
So let me hop back in here real quick. So there is actually a blueprint for for engaging these type of things. And that's the crazy thing about Texas, is that the alert program was developed there. They went over many studies and whatnot, and that's how they came up. So when's the last time we as vets went through mount training, clearing rooms and stuff? Over time, things evolve, tactics evolve. And that's what the alert program also teaches, is more evolved tactics because of what they've gathered, the data they gathered over time. And I find it hard to believe that if they're in Texas, they didn't get this alert training. Whether it's active shooter, barricaded subject, whatever it is, they should have had this training. Sure, if it happens again, they'll definitely know right away. But they have been trained. They have a blueprint on how to engage subjects, especially not even too long ago, the Uvalde SWAT team posted a picture of them on Facebook bragging about how they were going to go and get familiarized with the schools in their area and all the blueprints and conduct exercises going in and out of, just in case something tragic like recently just happens. So just putting that out there.
Just want to hop back in. So we train, and we hopefully that train will transition into when real events happen. The difference between training for me and real events happening is in training, it's more of a controlled environment. Once real world happens, you have adrenaline running, you have miscommunication, you have all sorts of things happening. And that's where I say this, because you can't really blame these guys, because this is the first time that this ever happened. In these, like I said, if it happened in Columbine, that would be a different story, because, given that it has happened over 10, 20 years ago, happened in 99, I'm trying to buy it up. But what I'm saying is they already have a real world event happening there compared to Uvalde or anywhere else for that matter that hasn't happened. Training, we would love the training to kick in when things happen, but there are, what do you call it? X factors that
chaos that actually happens.
Exactly. Yeah. That we don't take into account.
All right, let me add something. Is it too late to add something on there? All right, solid. Listening to Ati and what T was saying, I understand what T said would have made sense, because the rapid training for active shooters started in Texas because they have the most school shootings in the country, if I got it right. So there are a lot, as a law enforcement, I'm pretty sure Texas has one of the best law enforcement in the states. So, what Ati was saying, you can train and control environment, when stuff happens, it goes to shit, but still, you've been trained what you were supposed to do. And what Spencer was saying, if you're gonna, ask for a pay raise to do your job, do your job. It's the same as in the military. A lot of guys in the military want a pay raise because they actually do their job. And we train a lot. We spend a lot of time training. I'm pretty sure the same as for police officers when they go through the academy. That's all they do for 3 months is train. So to say I'm not saying what Ati says is wrong. All it comes down is an excuse. That's all I hear, because lives were lost. As soon as all you should do was say, sorry, this won't happen again. We'll do better next time. But all they did was throw excuses it never happened before there. It doesn't matter. Just own up to it and move on. But all I keep seeing on the news, they're making up excuses. All the people wants to hear is it's not going to happen again. That's it. Just own up to it. We'll move on. Hopefully this doesn't happen again. But, all I hear are excuses this never happened here before. Why were the officers standing outside? Just let's own up to it, move on, make America great again. You know what I'm saying?
And that brings it back to what Sualevai was saying, is people love to play that blame game. And I appreciate what you brought it all back to, Fatu, that we've got to be accountable for our actions. We talked about laying blame, who's to blame, who pays, etc. It's we have to have accountability, because if we can't be honest with what the problems were in the situation, how can we address them for the future? If you think there is no problem, then how can you solve that problem? We got to understand what the problem is first. And so having an honest accounting for what went wrong, it's got to happen.
And it comes down to this. I know this phrase is used all the time and it's a little bit cheesy, but put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking about. I know you won't fully understand where they're coming from, but you've at least made the attempt to understand what they've been through. In the United States, it's one of those countries that's where, because it's a melting pot, people bring all their ideals and their opinions, and because of that, we're able to sue everything. You fall outside my house, you're able to sue me. A robber or a thief breaks into your house and you shoot him and he lives, he's able to sue you. So America is one of those countries that I feel if you don't want to get sued, don't live in it.
Hey, just real quick, I want to say that I completely agree with Texas Ati, because I forgot, man, no matter how many times you train, and all of us can be witnesses of this, you still got some horses that don't drink that water. You know what I'm saying? You lead them to the water, you give them every possible opportunity to be good or great, and then they just crap the bed. So yeah, that's a good point on that. I mean, there's the chaos and the fog of what's going on, and there's also just sucking at what you do.
I just wanted to clear up one last thing for me, like to kind of like cap off my own thoughts on this, is that let's assume that if I assume the worst about the police in this situation, all the accusations that I have to hurl at them, let's say they were the worst cops in the world. At the end of the day, do I blame them for the lives lost? I hold them accountable, but I do not blame them. There's one person that I blame for the lives taken in this tragedy, and that was the shooter. This is the person who took his agency, that took his freedom of choice and chose to pick up a gun and go put bullets into children. These cops may have failed at preventing him from doing that, but they did not cause him to do that. They did not encourage him to do that. So the blame of the lives lost, I just want to clarify that, for as harsh as a criticism as can be lobbied at these cops, I don't think it's fair to make them wear this guilt of 19 lost lives on them when they were not the ones who picked up the gun and took those lives. They may have failed at preventing it from going as far as it did. They are still not the cause of why it happened. So just wanted to put that out there, that I don't think it's fair to make them wear the absolute 100% guilt of the lives lost of this situation, even if they were the worst cops in the world.
Oh, quick question. Did any of you guys, I know I was reading it because it was I read it on Instagram and Facebook. Like it sent me to a link and then I was reading it. I don't know if you guys heard anything about, someone posted that like couple of the people there saw a couple of the cops went inside, got their kids and came out. I don't know if you guys heard that, seen that rumor. I'm like, so if you if you were a cop, like you are courage enough to go in there and grab your own kids and leave, like why couldn't you grab someone else? I don't know. Maybe if it's a rumor or maybe it's just something I read on the internet. I'm not sure too. That's why I'm asking you, like if you guys heard or read that.
I didn't see that at all. That wasn't a cop that ran in there. That was a parent. He shed the badge on that one and said, hey, I'm going to make sure mine's take care of first before I don't know. I think I'm kind of of the same mind, but it's hard to be both at times. If that was my kid's school, but believe me, I would be in there guns a-blazing. But if that was my child's classroom, I'd probably go for my kid first. And that's just me being honest. It's if I had to choose between somebody else's kids and mine, I would choose mine every single time.
That's that human element that we brought up earlier. We're not, no cop is a drone. We don't build robots to go kick in doors. And once again, how could I blame someone in that situation? How dare you save your kid? Now, I do expect that you save other kids too, but can I really not see the reasoning behind that? If that were true, I don't know if that really happened. But
yeah.
That's the reason why I asked, because I was reading, because it said that multiple cops went in and grabbed their kids while other parents were trying to go in. The cops were stopping those parents from going inside. That's why I was asking if you guys read that.
Yeah, well, and I know that they definitely were holding other parents from going back in and getting their kids. I don't know if there were cops grabbing their kids, but if that was the case, that's really messed up, because at the end of the day, this goes back just for me personally, reinforcing my original stance that this is why I value the Second Amendment, because the ultimate solution in this was a good guy with a gun. The scenario that anti-gun advocates say does not happen. Yes, it was a federal border patrol agent that did it on his off day. The story that came out is that guy was getting his haircut and he gets this call. He didn't have a firearm on him. His barber had a shotgun. The barber loaned him his shotgun and the guy went and handled it. And he went acting on his own. He was not ordered in there. He was not said, hey, you take point. He was actually discouraged from the local police from going in, this is a whole flip on my usual suspicions, is that it was the Fed who went in there, not even the local cops. Like, it was the Fed who went in there, but he did it as the good guy with a gun. And so at the end of the day, it just goes back to me reinforcing my bias, you can definitely call it, that when it comes down to it, I don't want to play the game of, is it the good cop coming? Is it the bad cop coming? Is a cop coming at all? I want to take as many measures to protect myself and my loved ones as I can, handle the things that I can control. And that's one of the ones I want to be able to control. And so, anyways, that's my last 10 cents on this.
Just to finish up on my talking point. So at the end of the day, some of the things that I believe were kind of happening, and I don't know if this was really happening, and that's a great point too, is who takes credit at the end of the day. And when things like that happen, especially at the first responders point of view, there you have the federal level, you have the state level. Is it the federal that's going to take it? So I think there was a lot of red tape going on. In these certain situations, when that happens, you're preventing lives being saved. So I don't know at that level, how FBI, CIA, or who's going to take the credit. So I don't know if that was going on. Maybe that's part of the reason why the local police couldn't get in there, was because the FBI, I don't know the exact story is, but just by you mentioning that the federal or FBI agents they're the ones that wanted to initially get in there. So when things like that happen, that's another situation where it needs to be fixed. Why is the FBI? Why is the local? Who's trying to get in there to save the day and have their department be on the news? To me, it shouldn't really matter. It should be whoever gets in there first takes care of business and save lives. I'm going to poke at my question that I put out there, and I think it's going to open up a can of worms. We were talking about safe haven last week, and I believe the schools should be ultimately responsible. And the reason why is because at the end of the day, we send our kids to these schools, and it's a safe haven, right? They're supposed to, i.e., teach our children at the end of the day to protect our children. If they can't protect our children with guns or a security entity in their halls, they should have other means of protecting students. Reinforced locks or something. Were there any reinforced locks in the hallways, or in any response time to at least save lives in mere seconds? Seconds to save life, it's important. That 1 second. So I guess that's where my train of thought is. Because it's always happening. It's always a school, and our other schools are not learning from what's going on. So at the end of the day, to me, I think the school should ultimately be responsible. And I know I'm saying that right now, we're about to end this, but that's just what, I feel should ultimately come down to. But if they don't take responsibility, the put in place aspect to protect our children, that we entrust them 8 hours out of our days to teach and learn, I don't know. I'm thinking of the victims, the families. Who are they going to blame? Are they going to, that's where my train of thought is. And with that said, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ati. Thank you, everybody, for all your insight. I know there's a lot to discuss on this topic. We just hope that everybody out there can maybe take something from this. Be safe out there, everyone. Thank you for listening. And we'll catch you next time on Behind the Lava Lava. So far.